Let's take a closer look at the past simple tense as we use it in English. Another word for this also is the preterite, so just watch out for that. And the preterite, or the past simple tense, refers to an action in the past that usually has taken place at a fairly definite moment in time. Now, let's first look at how we form the past simple tense, and then we'll look at a few sample uses. So, the basic form with a regular verb is to add ed to the end of the verb. And that's how it becomes I kicked, you kicked, he, she, it kicked, and so on. It doesn't change in terms of number and person. It's going to be that same ending all the way through. Now, the spelling might change a little bit depending on the base of the verb, but we have a separate video about that. If we look at the negative version of this verb, we basically just add did not, and then we have the base of the verb. So we don't have I didn't kicked. We take the ed ending off. We just have the base of the verb. And to figure out what the base is, you can look at the infinitive, right? To kick. And then you just get rid of the to part. So I did not kick, add didn't, and then the base of the verb. That's the negative. To ask questions, we again use did, and we use the base of the verb again. So we say something like, did I kick? Now, one to watch out for, one that's a little bit tricky here, is the verb to be. Okay, the verb to be. And if we look at a question, for instance, if we were to follow this pattern, then you'd have to say, did I be? Now that sounds very awkward, and that's where you can see how to be has a different formula, has a different pattern. You would say something like, was I? Right? Was I? Or were you? And so on. So that one doesn't quite follow the regular pattern here. And there are also more irregular verbs that you want to watch out for, and these don't add the ed ending. They change their form often entirely. There's little rhyme or reason to them, at least from all appearances, and you just have to memorize them. An example would be if you say swim in the present tense, that becomes I swam in the past tense. Again, these are irregular verbs, and we won't deal with them quite so much here. Next, let's have a look at some sample uses of the past simple tense. So, first of all, we have completed actions. Completed actions. And this is very common. If you say, for instance, I ordered pizza. I ordered pizza. That's an action that has been completed at one point. It's a fairly definite moment in time, and we use the past simple tense. The next one here has to do with repeated actions. So repeated actions. And here also we can use the past simple tense. If you say, for instance, I watered, there's our past simple tense. I watered the plants every day. Now, notice that we have a time marker here. And often with repeated actions, we use this time marker to indicate how often we did it. Another related usage here has to do with frequency. So frequency. And you can see that both of these have something to do with customary actions. So we call this custom or habit. Right? So custom or habit. And if we think of frequency, an example would be something like, I sometimes skated to work. So when did this happen? Was this a definite moment? Well, it was a bunch of definite moments, but the frequency is what is being indicated here. And then one more fairly common use here is what we refer to as a sequence of actions. If we have a bunch of verbs in a row, a bunch of actions that took place one after the other, sometimes we use more complicated verb forms, but at other times we can simply use a couple of past simple tense verbs. Here's an example. If you say, we tried, but we failed. And you can see we've used one regular verb and then This one is a little bit different. It has the ed ending, but we've changed the spelling a little bit. So that when you have a y, then it can become a ie. So they're both regular verbs actually, but this one is looks a little bit different. That's it in terms of the most common uses, but I'm going to talk here briefly yet about some unusual ways to use the past simple tense. Draw a quick line here. And these are more exceptional versions, but they're really interesting, I think. So the first one is a conditional use. A conditional use. Let's say that you say, if he smoked less, and then you could finish this with something like, he would have more energy. You can see that in this conditional statement, which starts with if, we have smoked. Okay, it's a little bit different, but this expresses some kind of hypothetical situation. It's a hypothetical situation that's unlikely to come true, something that probably happened already, we can't do much about, but it still remains a conditional. Here's another one that's kind of tricky and interesting. If you're referring to a state in the past, a state of being, then sometimes you can use the past simple tense as well. Here is an example. He loved this city. And you can probably see that loved here refers not to one single action, but to a continual kind of state of being, a continual love for this city. And then one last one here, we can also express attitude. And this one is kind of bizarre actually. It's a very unusual way to use the past simple tense. Let's say that you say to somebody, let's say you say, did you want to work on our project? Now, what's unusual about this is that when you make this kind of request, when you express a little bit of hesitation, you're talking about your attitude, you're actually using the past tense in the present moment, because you're saying this about what's happening right now. Did you want to work on our project? This is a question that could actually use the present tense. Do you want to work on a project? Because it's still something that's going to happen. And yet in these cases, oddly enough, we are allowed to use the past simple tense. Here's another example. If you say, I hoped you would fix my car. Well, maybe the mechanic hasn't fixed your car yet, but you're actually saying this to kind of politely request the mechanic to fix your car. Very unusual. Okay, that's it for the past simple tense in English.